Hey everyone, my name is Ken Macdonald. Welcome back to the Happy Hour Chat. This is episode 9, and today I have an individual with a very unique background. I thought would be a great guest for us today. He's kind of been everywhere, but don't mistake that for really not being a total professional in what he does now, because he really is. So, Giovanni Roselli, thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, and I feel honored that I get to follow the man, the myth, the legend of Keith Hernandez. I don't know when this is being recorded, and maybe you did somebody after him, but the fact that I'm on the same podcast that Keith Hernandez was on just made my day.
Well, you're following him, so
yes.
So were you a Met fan growing up?
Big Mets fan, still am.
Okay.
And I actually had Mr. Met at my wedding. That's how big of a Met fan I am.
Wow, I will have to tell him that.
Yes.
That's pretty awesome.
Mr. Met appeared at my wedding for over an hour. He brought down the champagne toast.
Is that right?
Yeah, he danced on the dance floor. We took pictures. It was great.
Was it your buddy that was Mr. Met? I mean, who dressed up?
No, like the legitimate Mr. Met. Yeah, we had to rent him and the whole thing. Yeah.
Oh my God, that is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to give the listeners a brief bio, although it really isn't that brief. So Giovanni's a nationally recognized fitness coach. He's an author and presenter as well, and you're a Master Instructor for ViPR Pro and the Institute of Motion. You're also a Master Instructor for Kettlebell Athletics and CoreTex Fitness. I said locally, you're a fitness coach down at Boca Resort, right?
Yep.
Okay. And you present pretty frequently to FAU's exercise science department. So you do a lot. Now, the other interesting component to your background is that you were in the WWE. You were a professional wrestler from 2004 to 2006.
Yes. Yeah. In WWE, I was in there. Yeah.
Right. Now, you've also been in movies, TV shows. You've kind of been everywhere. And I don't know, when I first saw your bio, or I first met you down at when I first met you at the ViPR seminar, I was very interested in learning a little bit more about your background. So it's very cool that I get to talk with you today. And I thought it was really neat on your website. You refer to your journey in the fitness world as going from meathead to movement.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that, because the two training styles are totally different. I mean, what you're coaching now to your clients at Boca Resort, obviously you're probably working mostly with the baby boomer type generation versus, when you were getting yourself in shape, it was balls to the wall. I mean, it was bodybuilding, eating really strict, all that stuff. So you embody what it is to be a fitness coach. I mean, you live it, you breathe it. You've got the nutrition component down. You're a tier 4 master instructor for Equinox. So I'm hyping you up here, man. I want to. I want a lot of gold in this.
Yeah. So the one thing that I always wanted to look back on in my life was to say, that was pretty cool. Life. You know. And that's why I enjoy doing a lot of different things, and I like getting my hands in a lot of different things. And as I've gotten older, I've also tried to make sure that it doesn't take away from getting good at things, because that proverbial jack of all trades, master of none, which we've joked about in the past, I wanted to make sure that I got really good at what I wanted to get good at. But in the same respect, I wanted to experience thing. I want to experience, hey, there's an audition. Yeah, why not go on it? And then before you know it, that audition led to another audition. And then before you know it, I was in a couple films and TV shows and things like that, that I can look back on now and say, hey, that was pretty cool. That was fun.
Right. And I think that's a sign of a true professional. When you start something, you go in 100%. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not necessarily the fear of failure as much as not being as good as you can be, that sort of thing. That's sometimes how I think about it when I'm starting something new or everything. It's not that I necessarily think of failing so much, but it's like, okay, I want to be the best at what I'm trying to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And the whole thing with the meathead to movement was that obviously I was very traditional, linear, bodybuilding, body part split type of workouts and exercise. Once I got into Equinox, then I realized that I really don't know anything about exercise. Right. I I really don't know much about fitness.
That
And
realization, yeah.
I was okay with that. And I'm always that type of person who will be okay saying, I don't know. Yeah, I have no idea what you're talking about, but I love to learn. And that's what I did for my first several years of Equinox and beyond, where I found the smartest guys that would give me their time. And I said, just teach me, just tell me, I want to know everything that's in your head.
Yeah.
And that's how I started making the transition. And they were good enough where they made the light bulbs go off, which now I'm in a position where I want to make the light bulbs go off in other people, because I know how that feels. Like, I know how inspiring and how literally life-changing it is. I mean, the journey from meathead to movement, to be very dramatic, it literally changed my life. Like, it changed my style of fitness, exercise. It changed my career, going from a wrestler to a full-time fitness coach. So when you say all in, that's when I was all in. And I said, this movement stuff, it's good Kool-Aid. And then I drank it, and then I never looked back.
Well, there's truth to that. Ignorance is bliss to some degree, because it's like the more you end up learning and like you said, following your passion and trying to pursue knowledge, it's like, oh man, I really don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, everything looks like this is how it should be. And then you'll read something or listen to someone speak, and they'll just totally throw a kink in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've listened to a lot of podcasts lately. I've been doing a lot of reading, and one of the podcasts was talking about spinal flexion with deadlifting. And the particular gentleman who was talking about this was kind of a pain science guy, but he was very into the literature. Obviously, everything he wrote was based on data. And so his argument was, look, no matter what, when you're deadlifting, you're going through lumbar flexion. Even though you think you've got an anterior pelvic tilt, you're extending through there, your spine's neutral, it actually isn't. Now, the question is whether or not we get hurt is it in that dangerous part of flexion? You know what I mean?
Right.
But he was arguing, was like, you are in lumbar flexion. So if you've got a disc problem or an end plate problem or something, or an annular tear, you are potentially putting more stress on that. And when I, listening to that, I'm like, gosh darn it, man, everything, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know. It can be dangerous that way, I think, sometimes.
Well, I mean, especially in fitness. I mean, you ask one particular topic to 10 different people, and 5 will give you absolutely, and 5 will give you, that's the stupidest thing I ever heard.
Right.
So then you have to navigate, your style and your mindset of, what am I going to take from this? What am I going to believe? What should I take from this? And I ultimately respect the professionals that don't have to go around and bury anybody else or anything, and just say, here, this is what I believe in. This is what's worked for me, because what's worked for you didn't work for someone else, and something else worked for them.
Right.
And they've had great success doing it that way. So, that's the other thing, is that you can have a lot of success in fitness, and I guess in everything in life, by doing different things from different people, which is where the skill sets come in of, at least what you are doing, be really freaking good at it.
Right.
And then when you're really freaking good at something, then you'll probably have success at it because you have that particular skill set.
Right. It's like, follow those who seek the truth, doubt those who say they have found it. That's something I try to live by.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
and especially in fitness, where there's usually some type of, not all the time, but some type of monetary, way behind it, where if you do it my way, or if you pay for my certification, or you pay for my equipment, or you do it that way, then that there's no other comparison or this or that. Right. So you have to look out for that as well. And I mean, hey, we're all trying to make money, and we're all trying to sell stuff, and we all have things that we can offer. But it's there's no end all be all.
Well, that's what I like about you too. You have a lot of certifications, but you are able to pick and choose the pieces of gold from each one, and then apply it in an intelligent way with your clients. You know what I mean? That's kind of the way I look at it too. It's like, I don't want to go to for a certification and say, this is all I'm going to do. You know what I mean? because that's really not how it works. No one wants to do the same thing over and over again. Plus, there's a lot of ways to skin a cat and to make someone better.
Right.
But anyway, let's go back a little bit and talk about, I'm kind of interested in how you got into wrestling and then ultimately personal training, because wrestling is, I know there's different schools that people go to before they become professional, that sort of thing. And I'm sure you've kind of had to work your way up, but I'm really interested to know is how you went from maybe that particular situation to being noticed by like Vince McMahon.
Yeah. So I was always a big fan growing up, always loved it, always watched it. If it was on TV, I watched it. If it was on TV and I wasn't home, I would tape it and record it. Back in the day, we had to record on a video cassette. I would buy all the magazines. I was a huge fan. And as I got older, kind of as most of us, right? I think there's a point in time when you're young, and even if it's for a minute or for a year, like you like wrestling or you've seen it, and everybody, whether you could be 8 years old and then in a month you're off of it, but like there's a point where like you're into it, and I just never got out of it. And as I got older, I was like, I love this so much. I want to be involved in it. I don't want to be in the crowd. I want to be working in it. My first thought was that I actually wanted to be a wrestling photographer. So I took a camera.
Yeah.
I took a camera and I took pictures of all the wrestlers, and that probably just drew my fire that much more, because I'm taking like pictures of all these cool wrestlers, and it'd be like, how cool would it be if someone was taking a picture of me, or if that was me one day. And this is all early high school. I didn't work out really. I didn't really discover the gym or fitness or anything like that. Wasn't the best, athlete by any means. I didn't know what it took to become a great athlete until later on, until like college, and until I got into high level athletics, where I realized that you got to put in a lot of work and dedication. So then once I got into college, I made the deal with my parents. I said, I am going to go to wrestling school. I'm going to be a professional wrestler. And they said, just go to college. So I said, I'll go to college. I was lucky enough to bump into, so it's my freshman year in college, and we had a really nice gym. We have a really nice gym. I went to Sacred Heart University in Fairfield, Connecticut. And I bumped into a wrestler who was working out in the gym. Once I found out there was a wrestler working out in the gym.
Wow. What are the chances of that?
I said, and the old line is, hey, I want to be a wrestler. Like that's like you go up to you go up to a wrestler, you go up to somebody who's in the wrestling business and then they say, hey, so you want to be a wrestler, right? So he goes, there's a wrestling school about an hour away from here, from my college. He goes, I'll take you up there. And then from there, I just started going to wrestling school, which for me was cool because I was like college student by day, aspiring pro wrestler by night. And I was going to college and pro wrestling school. And then I just built up, enough experience where a really good wrestling school also has the ability to put on live shows, right? So that's how you get your first experiences, working in front of crowds, and then building up your name and, building your momentum from there. So then I started to work on some shows up in, what I didn't mention was that this was in Springfield, Massachusetts. Mm-hmm. So I started to do a lot of wrestling shows in the Massachusetts, New England area. All through college, one of my main goals in wrestling was I wanted to do a show in front of my college, in front of my friends and family before I graduated college. Mm-hmm. So that was mission accomplished. I think a month before we graduated, I put on a show in our university gym. And that's 4 years of wrestling at the time. And then I said, I want to go to WWE. But I took a little different approach. So I was in college in Fairfield, Connecticut, and where's WWE headquarters is in Stamford, Connecticut, which is very, very close. So I ended up applying for a job at the WWE headquarters because I said, how much closer can you get than by getting a job in the headquarters, right? And as a wrestling fan, there would be nothing cooler than to work in the WWE headquarters. Who knows? Vince McMahon's walking around. Who knows who you're going to see? They're going to film all this stuff. You know, it's going to be great. I applied and I got the job.
Wow.
So then I ended up working at the WWE headquarters for a couple years.
And you're still doing wrestling at this point?
I was still doing independent wrestling, yeah. But I didn't tell anybody in the office that I was an independent wrestler because then they'd be like, "Oh man, this guy's just got a job here, so he could take T-shirts or try to meet Vince or all this other stuff." So I just played it cool. Eventually, it came out, and they actually all loved it. They thought it was great
because you didn't say it in the beginning, too. I mean, that's pretty. Once they got to know you,
right. The eye was always on the prize, so I knew that I needed to go to the WWE developmental system, which at the time was in Louisville, Kentucky. Now it's in Orlando, Florida. So I said, I need to move myself to Louisville, Kentucky. Now, usually at the time, those who went to Louisville were already under contract. So you get signed a WWE deal, you go down to Louisville, you go to developmental, and then you wait to get called up to the main roster, to TV. So I decided that I was just going to go down there and roll the dice and take my chances and try to earn a contract. There was like a contract class, a non-contract class. There was, it was like a single A, double A, triple A.
Do they have scouts for this? Like, are there, because like you said, people are going to this with a contract already. So someone has seen.
Yeah. So there's scouts, either scouting, badass collegiate athletes that they can just mold from nothing. And some of these collegiate athletes, quite honestly, they're not even wrestling fans, but they're just really great athletes. So they said, I can make this really great athlete and make him into a really great performer. So then I moved myself down to Louisville, Kentucky, got a little place, stayed at an extended stay hotel, worked as a waiter, made just enough money as a waiter to pay for food and to pay for the hotel, and to go to wrestling school as often as I could. And then I worked my way up from the non-contract class. And then long story short, this is not really a short story, but there's a lot of hard work and obstacles along the way, but I'm limiting all that information. I was offered the WWE contract, which was to this day one of the best highlights of my life, because as you can imagine, just when you work so hard for something and when you do all this stuff, you're moving to another state. And what I didn't mention was that when I told people in high school and even college that I wanted to be a pro wrestler, what do you think the response was?
Oh yeah, they love, of course.
Yeah. So, you have all this going on. And during this time, I dislocated my shoulder. I had shoulder surgery, which made my
24, 25 at this point?
No. I was like 19 or 20 when I dislocated for the first time. And when at 19 or 20, I didn't know how shoulder worked. Yeah. I didn't know that I tore some tendons, ligaments, and cartilage in there. I just thought my shoulder popped out, it popped back in, and then in a couple weeks, I'm okay. Stability and all this stuff. Just like, when can I go back to shoulder presses?
Right.
And I had to learn the hard way because I ended up dislocating my shoulder after the surgery. Had to have a second surgery, and in between no surgery and the first surgery, I think I dislocated like 4 times.
So this is all before you got called up?
Oh, this is all before I even moved to Kentucky.
Right.
So I
you're still in college, yeah.
Yeah. So I dislocated my shoulder about 4 or 5, I think it was 5 times total. And then I had the surgery. The surgery was right before the show that I graduated.
Oh man.
so I was like cutting it close.
Right.
But I really wanted to do the show in front of my friends and family. I mean, it was so emotional. Like, I jumped out of the ring. I gave my mother a hug. Like, people were crying. Like, you know, it was, you know, but I have the video and pictures that I'm going to look back on forever.
Right.
So through the shoulder stuff and people telling me I couldn't do it, and moving to Kentucky and being a waiter and never being the best athlete, and, you know, not really discovering the gym until college, you get offered the contract, and it was so gratifying. But at the same respect, that point made me realize that the cliche that you could do anything you want in your life is totally true. Like, it's total. Like, I wholeheartedly believe that statement because I lived it and I went through it, and I went all in on being a pro wrestler. Right. And I'm barely 6 foot tall, not even 6 foot tall. At my heaviest, I was a little over 200 pounds. I was never the biggest guy. I was never the best athlete. If anything, I was one of the last kids that got picked. And then I realized hard work works. And I signed the contract, and then within a couple months, you know, I got called up with a tag team partner up to the main roster. And I got to live my dream. And even after my WWE run, I got to wrestle in Puerto Rico. Right. I got to wrestle in Europe. I got to wrestle in Italy, my home country where my dad was born. And I got to wrestle in United Kingdom and Spain and all these great places. Right. So it was a great journey.
So your wrestling name was Romeo Roselli, and you were part of the Heartthrobs. Is that correct? You came up as a tag team?
Right. Yeah.
And so do you remember your first match on TV?
It's funny you say that, because not many people could say that. Oh yeah, just leisurely. My first match on TV was in front of a sold out crowd in Madison Square Garden. Oh, God. So I could check that box too. Like, how many people?
Monday Night Raw? Was it?
Live on Monday Night Raw in front of a sold out Madison Square Garden crowd, on the same show that Hulk Hogan was on, who was my guy. Like, growing up in the 80s as a kid, you had you had to love Hulk Hogan. And right before we went on, he was next to us, and he introduced himself to us. And he's like, "Hey, I'm Terry. You know, Terry, nice to meet you guys. You know, you guys look good. You know, good luck." And it was like your head spins, but at the same time, you're like, be proud of what you've done. Right. Because, like, when I was 8, I went to Madison Square Garden, sat in the crowd, and cheered my head off for that man. And now I'm backstage shooting the breeze with him, ready to go out on national television. Like, it's still even hard to articulate. Right. You know, but like I said, that's when I knew, like, man, like, if you really want it, like, if you really, really, really want it, like, whatever it is, like, you can have it. You just got to, like, work really hard for it. And I worked as hard as I could. I'm not going to say that I worked harder than everybody, because we all work so hard. But I was one of the hardest workers, where even when I got a contract, I still went to the non-contract class. And I still went to all the practices, and I still went to all the things that I didn't have to go to, because I wanted to get the extra step and extra advantage. Right. That kind of catapulted me into everything else I did in life, because everything else I wanted to do in life, I knew I wanted to take the extra step. I wanted to get ahead of everybody. I knew I wanted to be the hardest worker in the room.
So you met Hulk Hogan. Who were you wrestling that night?
So we were wrestling the WWE Tag Team Champions at the time.
Right now.
Yeah. And we lost. Uh-huh. We lost. But at the end of the match, we jumped him, we blindsided him, we beat him down, and then
you played the heel. All right.
Yeah, we played the heel, and then we stood in the middle of the ring, and we were like, and I remember my partner, he started to walk out of the ring, and I took his arm, I grabbed him, I said, just stand here right now, dude. Like
Yeah.
you're in the center of Madison Square Garden and everyone is looking at you.
Right.
And the cameras were off at the time, so I knew that we would have a couple more seconds. Now, truth be told, like we didn't really do very well. Like we probably got called up too soon. And we could have used a little more seasoning and a little more time. Like I look back and we you know, hindsight's always 20/20 and be like, man, we debuted at Madison Square Garden and we could have been so much better, this or that. But in the same respect, you know, at the time I did as well as I could.
Right.
You know, I look back with a lot of fond memories, which to your question actually brings me to how I transitioned into fitness, where I was doing tours of Europe, Puerto Rico, going back and forth. And when I was in the United States, I needed gyms to work out in. And so I really didn't want to join a gym because I wasn't, you know, I wasn't there enough. And I was still kind of in Kentucky too, trying to, you know, stay there and wrestle around there. So I got a guest pass to Equinox.
And that's how it started, huh?
And then the rest is literally history. I got a guest pass to Equinox, and then I worked out there enough. And, you know, keep in mind, like some people may look at me and say, oh, he's still pretty muscular. I mean, I was twice the size I am now. And so I, you know, and I had spiky hair, I had crazy sideburns, like I kind of stuck out. So when I'm working out there, you know, I'm noticed. I was noticed to the point where the manager of the training department came up to me and he said, hey, you want a job here? You want to work here? What do you think? And literally the rest is history. And
it's so funny how things work out, isn't it?
And I use this story a lot. I say this story a lot because you never know where your next opportunity will come from. You never know what one question will lead you to.
Right.
And I think about that man every week at least. And I still have a picture with him and I still try to keep in touch with him because I was like, you literally changed the course of my life. Like I probably would have still been so driven to be a wrestler and try to do more wrestling and maybe try to go back to WWE and all this stuff. But like once he said that question, and I'm always looking for opportunities, right? So if someone says, hey, why don't you give this a shot? I'm always going to say, yeah, I'll give it a shot. And guess what? If I don't like it, then I won't do it. But at least I'm gonna give it a shot. And I said, how hard could this fitness thing be? Oh, you want me to be a trainer here? What? Oh yeah, do some squats, do some sit-ups, there's some dumbbells, do some bicep curls. How hard could this be? And that's when I realized that I didn't know anything because Equinox is so heavy on education, which I'm so grateful for. And then once I started to see other trainers train and I go through their education system and think of fitness the way they think of fitness, I just jumped down the rabbit hole and I found it so intriguing and so interesting. And I really never looked back from there. As we talked about, I found the best people. Yeah. I picked the most brains. I had a thing with one of my managers where she would do like word of the day with me. I said, every day I want to learn at least one thing. Just give me a phrase, give me a technique, give me a something, and I'm gonna look it up and I'm gonna learn it. So at least every day I'm learning something in addition to everything else that I'm learning. Right. I got the best trainers to train me because I said, well, I want you to train me because I still like to train hard, right? I'm still an athlete. And then I could see how they train and their techniques and everything like that. And then before you know it, I blink and now I'm a tier 4 master instructor for Equinox when I didn't know anything about exercise or fitness beforehand. I feel a little almost silly explaining it that way because some people would be like, oh, he didn't even go to school for this or he didn't even go to college for this. I literally did it backwards. Like I've taken so many courses and I've met the smartest educators and presenters in the world where, yeah, I didn't do that first and then go into fitness.
Yeah.
I got into fitness and then did it backwards. But the level of education that I've gone through and the classes that I've taken and the certification that I've taken and the people that I've learned from, I'm on average, I usually like to take every class or certification at least twice,
Right.
because I feel like I need that second and third time to really absorb all the information.
No, I totally dig where you're coming from, because I did the same way. I never had any intention of getting into the fitness world, and it just sort of happened kind of organically. I knew it was helping me with what I was doing at the time, which was playing professional golf. And I just kind of fell in love with it. And then I was like, wow, there's more to it than just chest press, machine, and bench press and leg press. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the reality comes, which I think you and I are both in this situation now, which is a great situation to be in, is that the majority of our clientele are that 55 plus years old, 60 plus years old. And I say this to a lot of young trainers who maybe ask for advice or come into the gym, that sort of thing, that want to work with athletes or sitting on the crew. I said, you're going to learn the most working with that clientele, because you're going to learn what works and what doesn't work, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Because it's easy to train someone who's young. You can give them just about anything and they're going to get stronger. And even if they get hurt in the process, they're going to recover pretty quick. But you're going to feel pretty bad if you're contributing to a rotator cuff tear, someone who's already got a degenerative tear. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Makes you think twice about your exercise selection, the education that you're taking yourself through, and that whole like risk reward aspect of it.
Right. I think Dan John, as we're all familiar with that name.
Yep.
I think he said something, I'm going to get it wrong, but he said, like, once you're a certain age, you have about 3 injuries left in you, like, to recover from before you like really are in the hole. I think he said, like, I forget what it was, like 30, 35. I could be totally wrong, but he's like, at a certain point in your life, you have about 2 to 3 injuries that you can come back from. After that, you're really digging a hole for yourself. And as I've also learned from taking courses like FMS from Gray Cook, is the biggest cause of injury is previous injury, and no one can know that better than me. What happens when I dislocate my shoulder? I dislocated my shoulder again, and then what happened after that? I dislocated my shoulder again. So as I was learning this, the light bulbs kept going off, because I was like, yeah, like that's you're talking about me, or you're talking about someone that I know.
Right.
And then you just try to make it your own.
Well, you start thinking too about how strong is strong enough.
Right.
What am I willing to do to take this person to that goal? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And are they willing to risk injury in the process? Because it's kind of I would say, ask Dan John, ask these guys that have been around. They would, when they look back, they'd be like, man, I would have changed my training style, right? I would not have done that bodybuilding type stuff. I would have been a little bit more functional with what I was doing, that sort of thing. But, when you're still trying to get someone strong, you're constantly fighting that battle between, intensity, volume, positions, the type of exercise that you're going to select. So, I sometimes find myself in front of my computer designing programs frozen. Like, okay, all right, I know this person has pretty bad arthritis in the knee. They probably have a meniscal tear, but they also have some back pain. So deadlifting might not be a good idea, but I'm trying to take stress off the knee. So you know what I mean? But I want it to be interesting. I don't want this person to get bored.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's what, both you and I are kind of in that position, and it's actually a really good position to be in, because it gets you to think.
Yeah. And having a talk with a lot of other colleagues, to your point, they've brought up that take someone in their 20s, they can have a bad night's sleep and have no breakfast and still crush it.
Yep.
And you could give them whatever, and it'll be okay. Take that 70-year-old guy who can't sleep, who maybe doesn't drink enough water, and who tore his rotator cuff 30 years ago.
Right.
And 30 years ago, he wasn't even going to rehab or exercise then. That's a whole other ball game that you have to be cognizant of. And, another thing that I've learned with dealing with people one-on-one is that never make judgments as much as you want to, as much as you feel the need to. Like, if someone says this hurts, or if someone's in pain, like, you can't be that silly coach that's like, no, it doesn't. Or like, how much does it really hurt? I mean, come on, just, just kind of push, like, you don't know. Which is why I think a lot of clients, and especially older clients, appreciate a trainer who's a little more seasoned, right? As opposed to that 22-year-old punk, or, hey, I was a 22-year-old punk. And as opposed to that person, a little less experienced, and they can't really relate, or they can't really understand what you're going through, or what you could potentially be going through. And that's just a lot of psychology too, which is why I like precision nutrition. I like Dr. John Berardi. Dr. John Berardi does has a great way of coaching, and the psychology of coaching, and how to talk to people, and how to get people to do things that they need to do, that maybe they don't know they need to do, or that they want to do, and things like that. So I jumped down that rabbit hole as well, where I realized, it's about the program, it's about the exercise, but it's just as much about the rapport, and it's just as much about getting people comfortable with you, and then you'll have a lot easier time getting them to do what you feel that would benefit them the most. Because in the end, I still got plenty of clients that if I just did bicep curls and sit-ups, they'd be fine with that. Mm-hmm. But I'm not okay with that. I want more from them. I want more from me.
Right.
And as you could attest, once you become a father, I feel like you look at time so much differently. And I don't want to waste any time. I don't want to waste a second of my life. I say that when I say that, I like look back as like, so that mean I was wasting time before? Maybe. But like at this point in my life, like I don't want to waste your time. Like, I don't want to be I call it enter-trainer, right? If we've heard that expression.
I have not, but I like that. I know people like that. Yeah.
There are plenty of enter-trainers out there. There are plenty of enter-trainers out there that actually do very well, and their clients like them, and everyone has a good time, and it's great. But in the end, they're not really doing much. They're just using smoke and mirrors, and they're using personality, and they're using, jokes, and they're using, just to get you through the session. And for some people that works, but I feel like that's a waste of my time. To just trade time for money like that. I need to get the most out of you. I need to get the most out of me personally. And I'm going to work as hard as I can to make sure that we don't waste each other's time.
Right. So you're involved now, and you have been for quite a while, with your hat, ViPR Pro, who is affiliated with the Institute of Motion. That's how I got to know you. I got interested in the Institute of Motion. I've known about them probably since 2010, something like that, 2009, and Michelle Dalcourt with this company. And what I've always liked about them is how they they took training, they looked at it and said, okay, what can we do to make this a little bit more specific to the reality of what's going on when we move our body, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Because as you know, training, even though we do three-dimensional movement, if we got sagittal plane, we got frontal plane, we got transverse plane, it's still kind of straight lines. You know what I mean? We try to keep the joints aligned. We try to keep bodies aligned, postures, that sort of thing. And what Institute of Motion has done, and I think with their piece of equipment called the ViPR Pro, is that they've taken that to another level and said, okay, we're going to introduce this concept called loaded movement training, where we are going to ask you to move three-dimensionally like you would in life, picking your kid up, bending over, reaching into the car, taking groceries out, stuff that's activities of daily living, and find a way that we can train that. And I know their background originally was with hockey players or kids on the farm. How can we replicate that farm strong feeling where the kid's baling hay, he's lifting heavy stuff, he's doing it over and over again? That's where they came up with the cylinder ViPR Pro. How did you get set up with them?
So I was fortunate enough that Equinox's ViPR at the time, ViPR's first deal was with Equinox.
Mm-hmm.
So ViPR was exclusive to Equinox. So we got first crack at it. And at the time I remember when I was first exposed to it, I was like, all right, cool. I get it. And then it took me a while.
Same thing. Same thing. Yeah.
However, to go back to what I previously said, one of the gentlemen that I really picked his brain, and I should give him a shout out because he always keeps quiet. His name is Rick Garrigan. He's a very great fitness coach, very great man. He's in California now, and at the time he was at Equinox in New York, and I just thought his style and what he knew and how he could articulate what he knew so that even the meathead like me can understand it. I said, I tried to be on him as much as I could. And then I had him train me a couple times to learn. I gave him client programs of say like, hey, can you pick this apart? Like, this is the case study. What am I doing wrong? What am I missing? And he ended up putting me through some workouts that had some ViPR in it, but it didn't have just ViPR in it. And it had, everything from, some corrective exercises to finishing with some deadlifting and some bench pressing and things like that. Obviously with some shoulder mobility stuff, he cranked on that in a good way. And the workouts were amazing. And that's when another switch went off and said, this ViPR stuff is pretty good. So lo and behold, he was a master instructor for Equinox at the time. And he was a master instructor for the ViPR curriculum for Equinox at the time. Mm-hmm. And just to go to show you, it's all about kind of relationships, and it's all about, kind of who you have in your network. When it was time to bring someone else in, who was first on his mind? Right. The guy who kept knocking at his door saying, Rick, can you help me? Rick, what can I do? Rick, can I? So I think that's also a testament to the fact that like, I really wasn't like trying to become a master instructor for ViPR, or I really wasn't looking to get that position. Once again, I fell in a position, and I'll use another cliche, hard work and luck meet.
Yeah.
And I put in the work, and I created more opportunity for myself.
Right.
And, the thing with me is that once you give me a little crack of the door, I knock it down. Like if you give me anything, then I knock down the whole damn door. Right. And that's what I did. And then I said, well, if I'm going to be a master instructor for Equinox and ViPR, I'm going to become the best freaking master instructor in the world. And I'm not saying that I was, but at least in my mind, I'm going to put in the work that I couldn't work any harder. I filmed Rick. I filmed a whole 8-hour workshop of Rick doing it. And I watched it over and over and over again. Not that I wanted to talk like him, but I wanted to get, the style down and how he did it. And then I make it my own. And I'm saying to myself too, hello, like I'm a professional wrestler. I'm used to being fairly entertaining, depending on who you ask. And I think I can add a little of my own spice and pizzazz into presenting, into being in front of people, which I think obviously really helped me as I got into a presenting type role. As you've seen me present once, I'm sure you've seen me kind of come up and down.
I think I always think this too. Like whenever I'm watching wrestling, I'm like, is this like, do they practice this? Is this scripted? I mean, this guy coming up with this on the spot, because this is like amazing. Like they never even stutter or miss anything.
Yeah. Some of the best can come up with it on the spot.
Wow.
Some of the best wrestlers are also the best improvers.
Well, that's like, you got to be able to do both. And
that's on the mic, but that's also in the ring.
Really?
A lot of people think that everything is scripted from start to finish, like every move, everything. The best wrestlers can literally, two of the best wrestlers, anybody, can go in the ring without anything scripted and pull off a phenomenal match.
Yeah. That's amazing. I didn't know that. That's very
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. But you got to, I mean, I'm talking about the best. I'm talking about, like, you know, Shawn Michaels, Triple H, Ric Flair, you know, those type of guys can do that.
Wow. That's pretty awesome. So let's, I just want to talk a little bit about your style of training and with your clients. What is your, I think if there's any trainers listening to this that might be interested, what's your screening process when you start with a new client? Do you have one to use?
Yeah. So, you know, with Equinox, once again, I was exposed to FMS. So I still find a lot of value in doing a movement screen such as FMS. I never went through a Gary Gray whole curriculum, but I've studied a lot of his stuff and I looked a lot of his stuff, and I've watched a lot of his stuff. So I also take pieces from his 3D type of movement analysis from there. Depending on the gym that I'm at, you'll probably have an in-body. So in-body's always good to see muscle mass. And I love to see an in-body because it also gives you that left to right. So it'll be, to me, it's always interesting to be like, do you know, like, your left arm has 4% less muscle than your right arm? Like that's something that we should consider when we're training. And obviously the assessment is face-to-face, you know, sitting down, getting the health history, the medical history, orthopedic. You know, unfortunately, I've seen a lot of trainers that just wing it, like day one, and they're like, I'm going to put you on an elliptical or a treadmill for 5 minutes. I'm going to ask you, hey, you got any injuries? What do you want to work on? And then they're just off to the races. And I just can't fathom that. And I can't fathom that coming from a client, but sometimes you don't know better until you have, like, a real coach, until you have someone who really cares. But that's usually, you know, most of the process.
So, and in the programming aspect of it, is it, you do quad sets, trisets, supersets? Are you doing full body workouts with everything?
Yeah. So I usually do a full body workout where I'll do, if I do a hinge, so a hip dominant movement on Monday, then we'll do a squat and a knee dominant movement on Thursday. And I'll just kind of complement. If we pushed, then we'll pull, or it'll be, you know, hinge, push, pull. Or maybe hinge, push, pull, core, and then hinge, push, pull, core. And we'll do, you know, rounds of that. That's after a very extensive warm up. I'm a big warm up person, probably almost too much. And I get a lot of crap when people see me, go through my warm up and how long it takes. But I feel like that's what I need to do, you know, to get myself in a place, you know, to be ready for that workout. I love quotes. One of the quotes I love from Abraham Lincoln is, if you give me 4 hours to chop a tree down, I'll take the first 3.5 to sharpen the axe. Right. So that's how I look at exercise. Right. I want to be so prepared that when it's time to actually chop the tree down and when it's time to actually perform, that I'm so ready that it actually doesn't need to even be that long. Like maybe 5 sets of deadlifts, push-ups, and some type of, you know, frontal or transverse plane to complement that stuff, a core exercise, and I'm done in 20 to 30 minutes. But like I said, sometimes my warm up takes a while. But to go back to the original question, then, you know, I'll do a good, you know, mobility/activation, and then get into the kind of the program goal or the strength block, you know, of the day, whether that's maybe more an aerobic response or an anaerobic response, muscular strength, you know, whatever. I train a lot of tennis players. So, you know, that rotational type of athlete, they need certain aerobic capabilities. So I have to keep that in mind as well. So that's how I kind of look at it. But you go through this evolution, which we kind of talked about, was like you take ViPR and you're like, oh my God, ViPR. And then you're just like, okay, I don't have to use ViPR all the time. Right. So then you're here. And then I got exposed to animal flow. Right. And animal flow, I was like, oh my God, animal flow is so awesome. And then I'm doing animal flow so much. Then I'm like, well, I don't have to do animal flow all the time. Right. So now I have like ViPR and animal flow that I went from here, but now I'm here. So now I can just put like ViPR, animal flow, a pull up, a push up, and a deadlift. And then I can all use them together versus like, honing in on one thing. And it still really, to me, it still comes down to, push, pull, horizontal push, horizontal pull, vertical pull, hip dominant, knee dominant, bilateral squat, unilateral squat, single leg squat, single leg deadlift, and things like that.
I think that's, what you're saying is exactly how simple it can be. And I think, I remember when I was learning about all this, they said, try to make your exercises and your programs replicate what humans do, like what the body does. The body can pushes something. The body can pull. There's your second exercise. You have leg exercises. You can hinge through the hips. That's going to work the back side of your legs. You can bend through the knees or squat through the knees. That's going to be more the knee dominant. That's going to work the front of your legs. Throw something in there for the core, usually something in that anti category, right? Anti-rotation, anti-side bend, anti-plank. That was popularized by Mike Boyle. And it became, voila, that's it.
Yeah.
And we learn so much, but we end up going back to those fundamentals, because really, if you keep those fundamentals in mind, you're really going to limit the risk that you're putting someone through, I think, in my opinion, when you're taking them through that full body action. You're going to get the heart rate up. You can put it in a circuit fashion. So if you got 3 exercises part of that circuit, the person's never repeating the same movement. They do a push, a pull, a leg, heart rate's going, you can circuit that through. And then the next circuit, you go to the other categories that you would use, kind of plug and play. So it's it doesn't need to be super hard. And where it gets fun is using like the ViPR. And that whole concept, for people that don't know, the ViPR Pro is kind of a cylinder type thing, a weighted cylinder. Was that right? Like a long roll-up carpet, something like that. But it's got grips on it. And basically you can take that and move it through gravity, which is different than what you would do with a barbell. Basically you'd be working against gravity, or dumbbells against gravity. So the further you move that weighted implement away from the midline of your body, the more you're stressing the core muscles to help stabilize your spine. And that's what I like about it. So you can start to move that 3-dimensionally. It doesn't have to be a straight line. You know what I mean? It can be a circular type motion. It could be a halo type motion. It could be a reach. And that's what I learned a lot from, your certification when you did that, or your seminar. And that's where I enjoy programming, because, wow, I can take that now and throw that as part of a core exercise.
One of the mentorships that I took for Institute of Motion, Michelle said this. Michelle Dalcourt, for those of you who don't know, is one of the men who created ViPR, now ViPR Pro. And I'm sure he didn't coin this. I'm sure he got it from something else. But he said, our minds are like parachutes. They only work when they're open. And once I started to see the applications, just like you're saying, of, you know what, when I have to put my Christmas tree on top of my car, I got one foot slightly in front of the other. This foot's kind of turned out. One arm is higher than the other. I have to move this weight away from my body. I have to be strong out here. And then I have to pull it back off of the trunk of the tree, off the trunk of the car. And you start thinking about all this stuff. It's like, yeah, I want to be strong to do this stuff too.
Odd position strength, which is what they call that, and which I think is a brilliant name for it.
Yeah.
So I don't want to keep you much longer here, man. You've been great. So are you an educator first, or are you fitness coach first?
I think I'll always be fitness coach. Yeah, I think I'll always be a coach first. But things have evolved and continue to evolve for me as a presenter. I always see, I even when I'm a presenter, even when I'm presenting, I never feel like the teacher. I always feel like the student. I still feel like a student, where I feel like I still have so much more to go and so much more to learn to stand up in front of people and to have them take what I say with validity.
Yeah.
So in that respect too, I feel like I'm still definitely a fitness coach first, because I have a long way to go in regards to presenting, and I've come a long way already. But there's always going to be something for just standing in front of somebody and having a kick-ass, training session with them.
Yeah.
The last couple of years, there's been something with standing in front of, a bunch of students or a bunch of colleagues and getting my message across that way. That's been the closest that I've gotten to getting kind of that wrestling high again.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, of course.
Being in front of that audience. But in the same respect, I got to be like, wait, they're not here to be entertained. They're here to learn. So I need to
tone down that inner trainer.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's always my priority. Be like, okay, entertain them just enough so you keep their attention, and then make sure they walk out of this room saying, I'm so freaking glad I took that class. Mm-hmm. And that's my ultimate goal with whatever I do. And right. I may have said it in your workshop, I may have not, but most of the time I teach a workshop and I say, to go back to time, is I don't want to waste your time. Yeah. And I don't want you to waste mine. So how about for the next 7 hours or however long I'm going to speak, is that we get the most out of what we've been given. And that's my ultimate goal. With the real goal is to have people experience something similar to what I got to experience when I was introduced to something that I didn't know before, or when I was told something that was in a different way that finally made me say, oh, now I get it. Right. And that's what I'm trying to pull out of when I present.
Yeah, because both of us, I mean, obviously we have totally different backgrounds, but we kind of got into fitness in the same manner. And I didn't really have any kind of mentor that I could go to and tell me where to discover new education, or this is what you need to be doing, that sort of thing. I don't really think you did either. You went out and found it. And I was kind of the same way. So anyway, you're a fascinating dude, man. Thank you for taking time.
Only in my own mind.
Nah, but it's pretty cool to see that, you had such a lofty goal as such a young person, and you were able to get there with not having those innate talents that you say a lot of people do have. But you worked hard enough and you made yourself get it.
What is it? Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard.
Work hard. Mm-hmm.
And then if you get someone who's talented and does work hard, sky's the limit.
Yep, that's right. So, hey man, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Hope to see you soon.
Yeah, hope so.
All right, buddy. Thanks, man.
All right.